Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Monday, September 27th. This is Africa 54.
The architect of the Rwandan genocide dies at 80. Africa's rising soccer stars train in Egypt's refugee academy. And in Congo, turning to skating to overcome trauma.
A former Rwandan army colonel regarded as the architect of the 1994 genocide in which more than 800,000 ethnic Tutsis and Hutus who tried to protect them were killed, died in a hospital in Mali on Saturday. 80-year-old Theoneste Bagosora was serving a 35-year sentence after being found guilty of crimes against humanity by the International Criminal Court Tribunal for Rwanda. Known as a hardliner within the party of the Rwandan President Juvenal Habyarimana, Bagosora was appointed cabinet director in the defense ministry in 1993 and took control of military and political affairs in the country. Bagosora was accused of taking over the affairs of state after Habyarimana was killed when his plane was shot down in 1994. Bagosora was sentenced to life in prison in 2008, but that sentence was reduced on appeal. Hundreds of people took to the streets of the Tunisian capital Sunday to protest President Kais Saied's recent decrees bolstering the already near total power he granted himself 2 months ago. Protesters in Tunis demanded the country's constitution be respected and parliament reinstated. In July, Saied fired the country's prime minister, suspended parliament, and assumed executive authority, saying it was due to a national emergency. Some of those participating in Sunday's protest were lawmakers from the Islamist party Ennahda, the most powerful political party in Tunisia, which had previously supported Saied.
Today, we went out carrying the flag of Tunisia and the constitution of the Second Republic, which most of the Tunisian people voted for. There's no way to speak on behalf of the Tunisian people. This is the constitution of an elected constituent assembly, and all Tunisian people participated in writing it.
Saied's new decrees include the continuing suspension of parliament's powers, the suspension of all lawmakers' immunity from prosecution, and a freeze on lawmakers' salaries. Saied's critics are calling his actions a coup. The Malian Prime Minister says the nation could push back presidential and legislative elections from late February to avoid their validity being contested. Mali's progress back to democracy following the August 2020 overthrow of former President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta is being closely monitored in a region that has experienced 4 coups in 13 months, 2 of them in Mali. Under pressure from the economic community of West African states, Mali's new military leaders agreed to an 18-month transition that would culminate with presidential and legislative elections in February 2022. But in an interview with Radio France International and France 24 on Sunday, Interim Prime Minister Choguel Maïga says that date could be postponed. Movie audiences recently returned to plush red seats in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, on Wednesday for the country's first public cinema screening since before a civil war broke out in 1991. Soraya Ali has more.
Somalis chatted excitedly as they took their seats in a cinema. But this isn't a typical trip to the movies. It's the country's first public film screening since before civil war broke out 3 decades ago. On show at the National Theatre, 2 short films by Kaif Jamak. She left Somalia when she was 6 and, having settled in Cairo, has made 60 short films and skits with Somali filmmaker Ibrahim CM.
This is for every Somali youth that wants to make movies, that now they have a hope, that they know that the national theatre is ready for them. Every Somali person in Mogadishu and all of Somalia is ready for them. Every fan who wants movies is ready for them. Every Somali kid is ready for them.
The Somali National Theatre opened in 1967. It became an important home for the country's tradition of storytelling and hosted Pan-African film festivals in the 1980s. When civil war broke out in 1991, the theatre closed. It reopened again in 2012, but 2 weeks later was targeted by an Al-Shabaab suicide bomber. The doors remained shut until 2020.
Films help every society to be shaped in certain ways. If our people, if every Somali person is watching Indian movies and Arab movies in their own TVs, then they're being influenced by those movies. They're being influenced by those people's culture. But if our own movies come to the TV and come to the theaters, then every Somali person and a child will be shaped and being influenced by their own culture.
Jamaat's films were comedy Date Night and Horse, a horror story about a woman who moves into an empty house. And despite the theatre's troubled past, she's excited and optimistic that the return of film could herald a happy ending for Somalia's cinema industry.
That was Raya Ali of Reuters reporting. Professional soccer player Francis Deng Kowal imagines that life without soccer would be very harsh. And that's why he founded a soccer academy in Egypt with the hope of inspiring young African refugees through the sport. Here's Clara Frank with more.
In Cairo, soccer professional Francis Deng Kowal is honing the skills of a new generation of players. But these trainees are not Egyptian. They are young refugees from across Africa. Kowal, who moved to the Egyptian capital from South Sudan for his studies, believes life without soccer would be very harsh. And that's why he founded the South Sudan Soccer Academy.
The academy aims to help families raise their children, teaching young people soccer skills, to protect them from negative behavior in the street, like homelessness and leaving their homes. We teach them in the academy to respect the old and the young, to respect fathers and the elderly in the streets. We also support women in soccer and women's rights, because women have the right to play soccer.
Established in 2019, the academy currently trains 180 refugee children aged 5 and above. Kowal's aim is to help the children, who often live in difficult conditions, to integrate into society and avoid negative behavior like street violence. At the same time, he's trying to instill a passion for soccer in young players like 13-year-old Bibo Abdel Galil from South Sudan.
I dream of playing in big clubs abroad like Real Madrid. And I really want to be like the ideal player, Toni Kroos. And I want to be the captain of the South Sudan national team.
The club is paid for by community contributions, mostly from the families of the trainee children. But Kowal says it faces many financial problems due to the costs of renting a pitch and paying for balls and uniforms. His hope is that South Sudanese or Egyptian soccer unions can help him out. Clara Frank, VOA News.
The Cumbre Vieja volcano in the Spanish Canary Islands continues to spew lava and debris 1 week after it erupted and forced thousands of people to flee their homes. A local airport has reopened, but planes remain grounded as ash clogged runways and lava fills the skies. VOA's Arashar Basadi has the details.
Drone images show lava running down the Cumbre Vieja volcano as the eruption wreaks havoc on the Canary Island of La Palma. Satellite imagery shows the eruption from space. On Sunday, Pope Francis spoke of the disaster from Vatican City.
I express closeness and solidarity to those affected by the eruption. I'm thinking especially of those forced to leave their homes, for these people so tried by sufferings, and for the rescuers. We pray to the Madonna venerated on that island as Our Lady of Snows.
Spain's National Geographical and Mining Institute says its drones captured these images of the volcano's cone collapsing under its own weight. La Palma is home to more than 83,000 people, and around 6,000 have been forced to evacuate since lava began devouring their homes last week. Donation centers like this one at a local sports complex have sprung up to distribute food and clothes. And those searching for a way off the island encountered long lines at ferry terminals as the airport remained closed until Sunday. Ash on the runways and lava spewing into the sky mean that for now, planes will remain on the ground. Authorities report no fatalities or serious injuries from the eruption, but as much as 15% of the island's banana crops could be at risk, threatening thousands who depend on the industry for work. Farmers warn that lava flowing to the sea could affect irrigation pipes for the entire region. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News, Washington.
The Kennedy Center in Washington began its 50th anniversary season in mid-September with musicians back on stage and spectators in their seats. But there are some COVID-19 measures in place for the new season. Karina Bafrajian reports.
The Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington is celebrating its 50th anniversary season and the complete reopening of its stages. In the new season, spectators will still have to wear face masks, but they can enjoy the performances without having to social distance. The musicians returned to stage in mid-September after performing remotely since the pandemic began in early 2020.
So great to be back, and this is very exciting because this is the first time we've been back to the Kennedy Center performing for a full audience and having the full orchestra on the stage.
President of the Kennedy Center, Deborah Rutter, says even though the pandemic is not ending anytime soon and there is a surge in Delta variant cases, the center will not close again. One reason is that every person who enters the center must show proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test.
I distance myself. I'm typically alone anyways. Myself and my husband and my son.
A quarter of the usual repertoire had to be cut for the anniversary season due to the pandemic, but officials say it will still be special.
We have been anticipating the 50th anniversary for many years now, but over the last 18 months, we've really been rethinking it. And my team have really worked hard to simmer their ideas down to that perfect sauce.
Performance will range from stand-up comedy to ballet. The foyer includes photographs from the Kennedy Center since opening day.
I have a signed and autographed program page from opening night, September 8th, 1971, as well as a ticket stub.
The Kennedy Center stage is rich in memories. Mikhail Baryshnikov presented his ballet Nutcracker here. Maria Callas starred in the opera Norma by Vincenzo Bellini. Aretha Franklin sang Natural Woman to the former President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama. The staff here says they are ready to start making new memories. Karina Bafrajian for VOA News, Washington.
Still to come, how roller skating has become a way to forget life troubles in Congo. Plus, Heidi Adams tells us what's coming up on the next edition of Straight Talk Africa. Stay with us.
Join me on the next Straight Talk Africa. We're going to talk about the weather. Climate change is wreaking havoc worldwide, and many African countries are already feeling the heat. But is it time we change the way we think and talk about the climate emergency? We'll look at what's behind the growing call for climate justice across Africa, and we'll shine a spotlight on young Africans who are taking climate action in their countries. Join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is defending President Joe Biden's foreign policy record as the administration faces pressure over its handling of the Haitian migrants on the U.S. border, the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, and a nuclear submarine deal with Australia that angered France. VOA senior diplomatic correspondent Cindy Sain reports.
President Joe Biden told the United Nations General Assembly this week that the world is at an inflection point, and he vowed to pivot from an era of relentless wars to an era of relentless diplomacy, with the United States committed to multilateral institutions like the UN. But the recent hurried U.S. departure from Afghanistan, with an untold number of Afghans who helped the United States left behind, is just one of multiple foreign policy challenges the White House has faced in recent weeks. At the UN, Secretary of State Antony Blinken faced some tough questions on Biden's foreign policy challenges.
The chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, this new security agreement between Australia, the US, and the UK that enraged the French, the border crisis.
Blinken said everyone he had spoken with at the UN has expressed appreciation for Biden's foreign policy vision.
A United States that is determined to work closely with other countries. A United States that understands that not a single one of the big problems and challenges we face, that our people face, the ones we've talked about, from COVID to climate to the disruptive impact of emerging technologies, not a single one can be addressed by any of us acting alone.
But most experts agree the Biden administration has had some foreign policy setbacks, including angering France. Brian Katulis is with the Center for American Progress.
Certainly the center of gravity for this new administration's focus has been at home in dealing with the pandemic and vaccines and the economic situation. So much of the president's personal time, even though he was speaking at the United Nations this week, I think much of his time this week will be spent trying to discuss with Congress and convince them of his infrastructure plan and the social safety net.
Other experts say Biden is focused like a laser on solving problems at home, sometimes to the detriment of his foreign policy execution.
First, it distracts him. It makes him stubbornly and I think willfully focused on turning his attention to what he wants to do, and that is to become a transformative president at home.
Katulis said some long-term problems at the State Department have likely also played a role.
I do think that there's just some institutional decay inside of, especially the civilian side of the U.S. diplomacy and State Department. This is nothing new and not even related to the Biden administration or even Trump. It's a long-standing problem of these organizations, essentially since 9/11, being overshadowed by both the Pentagon and the intelligence agencies.
Congress may also be partly to blame. Christopher Skaluba of the Atlantic Council told VOA.
In the State Department, within the Defense Department, I think there is still a little bit of a recovery going on from the neglect of the Trump years. And also, for whatever reason, the confirmation of the senior people in many of these positions have been slow. The administration was somewhat slow to nominate people, and now the Congress is very slow in confirming them. And so when I think about transatlantic security in particular, we don't have a NATO ambassador.
Blinken, who grew up in Paris, has vowed to work hard to restore the close U.S. relationship with France, saying it will take some time. Cindy Sain, VOA News.
U.S. President Joe Biden hosted the leaders of India, Japan, and Australia on Friday for a meeting of the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, or the Quad, part of his foreign policy push to focus on the Indo-Pacific region and counter a rising China. White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara has the report.
In his first in-person summit with the leaders of India, Japan, and Australia, U.S. President Joe Biden said Friday the so-called Quad is on track to meet the commitments the group announced in March.
Our vaccine initiative is on track to produce an additional 1 billion doses of vaccine in India to boost global supply. We're taking action on climate change with new partnership toward a zero-emissions shipping.
Supply chain ho ya vaishvik suraksha ho.
From supply chains to global security, from climate action to COVID response to cooperation in the field of technology, our proud to play the role of a force for global good.
While China is not officially on the agenda, the Quad's biggest concern is Beijing's maritime threat in the Indo-Pacific region. China has built military installations in the South China Sea and used them to back claims to sovereignty over the key global waterway and trade route. Leaders stressed the need for a free and open Indo-Pacific, a phrase referring to a strong policy stance against Beijing's ambitions.
共通のビジョンへの揺るぎのないコミットメントを示すものであります。
Four countries who share fundamental values, cooperating for the cause of realizing a free and open international order based on the rule of law in the Indo-Pacific.
We believe in a free and open Indo-Pacific because we know that's what delivers a strong, stable, and prosperous region.
The group announced several agreements aimed directly at China, including a 5G partnership, bolstering the semiconductor supply chain, boosting maritime security, and combating illegal fishing. But members of the Quad have varying economic and trade ties with China, which means differences in their willingness to act against Beijing.
There isn't necessarily a meeting of minds when it comes to issues like supply chain resilience. And certainly this whole idea of economic resilience and economic competitiveness also means a rise of nationalism within these four countries themselves. So they're not necessarily going to always want to cooperate. They're actually also going to be competing with one another as well.
Beijing has criticized the Quad, saying it should abandon its Cold War mentality. Still, analysts say the Quad is an important deterrent, particularly with India in the mix.
If you are competing against a country which has 1.2 or 1.3 billion people and it has a large military and resources, you need another country which is comparable in size, population, military, and use China as a rival.
Australia is also a strong partner. Earlier this month, in the so-called AUKUS deal, the U.S. and United Kingdom agreed to provide nuclear-powered submarines that would increase Canberra's maritime prowess in the region to deter China. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News at the White House.
A time of intensity. That's what U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat, is calling this week in Congress as lawmakers are expected to vote on a $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill, but also consider the Democrat-backed $3.5 trillion sweeping social spending package core to the Biden administration's agenda. VOA's Michelle Quinn has the details.
Good morning, everyone.
The Biden administration's domestic agenda faces a major test this week. Congressional leaders are negotiating over the timing of voting on a bipartisan infrastructure bill, which would increase spending for roads, bridges, and other projects. Some progressive members of the Democratic Party say they won't vote for that $1 trillion package unless the bigger $3.5 trillion social spending bill, President Joe Biden's Build Back Better, also comes up for a vote. The smaller bill is likely to come up first, and the cost of the bigger package will likely be cut as negotiations proceed, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told ABC's This Week.
This isn't about moderates versus progressives. Overwhelmingly, the entirety of our caucus, except for a few whose judgment I respect, support the vision of Joe Biden, and we will make progress on it this week.
Yet another issue looms. The government could start running out of money sometime in mid-October, according to a recent report. Congress will have to raise the debt limit so that it can borrow money to pay for a wide array of spending already approved, including the military and Social Security. Last week, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, a Republican, said the Republicans are not going to help the Democrats raise the debt ceiling, arguing that the Democrats should pass it on their own since they are poised to pass the $3.5 trillion bill, which many Republicans oppose.
Don't play Russian roulette with our economy. Step up and raise the debt ceiling to cover all that you've been engaged in all year long.
But much is at stake. A partial government shutdown could happen later this week if Congress doesn't pass spending legislation. The Senate is expected next to consider a bill which passed the House that would extend spending limits, raise the debt,
and provide aid to communities hit by natural disasters and to Afghan refugees. Michelle Quinn, VOA News.
For Serge Makolo, roller skating is a way to forget his troubles, such as the volcanic eruption that destroyed his home. And he hopes it might one day earn him a medal on this highest global stage. David Doyle has more.
Traffic and potholes aren't the only perils for roller skaters in Democratic Republic of Congo's Goma. The city is located in restive North Kivu and is considered a refuge amid the province's decades of bloodshed. But in May, Goma was hit by a different kind of violence: the eruption of Mount Nyiragongo. At least 31 people were killed and thousands of homes destroyed. Among those affected was Congolese speed skater Serge Makolo. He just had time to grab his roller skates and a fistful of medals before magma swallowed his home.
This eruption hurt me a lot because I lost many things. I owned a lot of the equipment, and some belonged to the children I supervised. Junior skaters who will replace us in the future. The future world champions of tomorrow. All of this equipment was in the home. Skates and helmets.
Makolo has been entering competitions, hoping to win prize money to rebuild his academy. This month, he scooped an individual gold and 4 other medals at a national competition in Kinshasa. He and some of his friends also have their sights on another event being held in Congo's capital, next year's Francophone Games. But it's not just about a podium finish.
Skating can comfort us and make us forget the bad things that have happened to us, especially the young people. The stresses of wars and eruptions evaporate as we ride. Skating makes us feel alive and reborn again.
However, there is one more medal in Makolo's dreams. Roller speed skating appeared in the 2018 Youth Olympic Games. If it becomes a full Olympic sport, Makolo hopes to one day bring back a gold to Goma.
That was David Doyle of Reuters reporting. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, we thank you for watching.